Good day, everyone. We are Group 4, and these are the last six sections or lessons that we are going to talk about before we close the chapter of Rizal. We will discuss the circumstances and how Rizal shifted his perspective on how the Spanish colonizers ran the system. Being a propagandist asking for reforms and campaigning for assimilation, to having more aggressive stunts against leaders, corruption, particularly the friars or the praile. Again, we are Group 4 from A51, consisting of BACUYAG, CRUZ, ELMEDULAN, Javier, MARINAS, MAUHAY, QUITO, SAMOLE, me, Angelo Santillan, and SINLAO. Section 1 is the indolence and the Spanish colonial rule. There is a question inside my head about the title, The Indolence of Filipino. Why do the Spanish call or accuse us Filipino being indolent? First, what is indolent? Indolent is act of laziness. Here, I am going to present the other words of Rizal written after the publication of his first novel, Noli Me Tangere. After Rizal published the Noli Me Tangere, he became an active member of Solidaridad. La Solidaridad is a newspaper that Rizal established alongside Graciano Lopez Haina and Marcelo H. Del Pilar. We will be talking about two articles, the Sobre la Indolencia de los Filipinas and the Los Agricultores Filipinos, that were both created. The Spaniards' accusation that the Filipinos were indolent. Shortly after Rizal published his first novel, Noli Me Tangere, he became an active contributor to the bi-weekly newspaper La Solidaridad. Two of his essay were published on the newspaper. The Sobre la Indolencia de los Filipinos in 1980s and Los Agricultores Filipinos in um, 1889. However, Rizal believed that such indolence was not inherent, but was caused by climate of the Philippines, both in a physical sense as a tropical country and in a socio-political sense in retaliation and in relation to the social disorders rooted in the Spanish rule. For Rizal, indolence can ultimately be traced to the abuse and discrimination experienced by Filipinos under the Spanish rule, which led to the deterioration of Filipino values. He also pointed out in his essay that it was imperative to study the cause of such indolence so that a proper solution could be conceptualized. He compared it to an illness by saying that the indolence of Filipinos must be properly diagnosed before a prescription could be made. Specifically, there were the economic policies implemented by the Spaniards that require Filipinos to pay unreasonable taxes or tributo and render polo y servicio that mandated forced labor on Filipino males aging from 16 to 60 years old for a 40-day straight period of time. If you may not know, polo y servicio was a forced labor system. It is a system without compensation imposed upon the local population in the Philippines during the Spanish colonial period. And tributo is a system of taxation imposed by the Spanish colonial government on the Filipinos in order to generate a greater sources for the maintenance of the colony. Filipinos were tagged indolents once they showed a disagreement or resistance to what was being asked them to do during that time. In the essay, Rizal linked a two-factor to the indolence of Filipinos. First was the limited training and education provided to the Filipinos, for the Spanish government feared a possible insubordination and retaliation. Second was the lack of national sentiment of unity among Filipino caused by the stigma that Filipino culture was inferior to foreign culture, which compelled humble submission. Due to colonization, Filipino lost the sense of valuing their nationality or owning the superiority of being a Filipino. Insecurity and inferiority to foreign cultures made our countrymen back then to feel small. Given this factor, Rizal concluded that the solution to the Filipino indolence was education and delivered liberty from oppression. In the essay, Rizal recommended to the Minister of Colonies to consult Filipino farmers who would be affected by an agrarian problem to assist them. Rizal pointed out that calamities were not solely to blame for the poor harvest of Filipino farmers, but rather the abusive colonial policies such as Polo y Servicio nga, that minimized the productivity of for farmers, and Rizal also brought the attention to the problem of banditry or thievery or thieves on rural farms. In this article, his intention was for the Spanish colonizers to develop agriculture in the Philippines, as it means to social and economic advancement. He was exiled in Dapitan. Rizal uh, dedicated much of his time to attending the farm. He also brought in that he bought in Talisay. In his farm, he used modern agricultural methods that from his observation from his travels in Europe. During that time in the 19th century, the inability of colonial guards to provide adequate protection to the farmers and their farmlands prompt the result to urge farmers to be equipped with guns to defend themselves against the lawless elements demanded from Ministry of Colonies. Urgent solution to these problems. First article was sobre la indolencia de los Filipinos in 1890. This article talked about how the Spaniards called the Filipinos indolent. His conclusion, which are education and liberty from oppression, are the main cause of declining of Filipino values. And the second article was Los Agricultores of Filipinos in 1889, in which talked about the thievery or pagnanakaw and kahirapan and the inadequate security for the agricultural sectors of the Philippines and its farmers. We will going to talk about the abandonment and assimilation. In this topic, the question that goes around in this topic is that why did Rizal almost abandon his first steps in campaign for change, and how Rizal shifted his perspective on how the Spanish colonizers run the system. We are going to present to you the circumstances that prompt Rizal to consider other means of campaigning for reform for the Philippines after a series of setbacks, both in the Philippines and Spain. Rizal was set to move forward to demand change for the colonizers, and the lack of campaign reform led by the Ilustrados and other propagandists prompt many Filipinos to believe that such campaign was futile. Rizal realizes that all their sacrifices, efforts, are no progress, resulting them to lack of hope to support and continue the campaign for independence and change for the Philippines. Filipinos in Spain were also losing motivation. Others opt to possibly participated in Filipino initiatives, while others decided to find their own ways to take in more active campaigns against Spain. This had been the scenario among the Filipino nationalists in Spain. Personal rivalries among Filipinos are cross and become a hindrance to the formation of concrete plans and actions.
The desire to form a purely Filipino organization was fulfilled with the establishment in Barcelona on December 13, 1888, in La Solidaridad. This organization was sort of a rival of Marita's Madrid group, although the two organizations joined together in a petition addressed to the Minister of the Colonies asking for representation in the Cortes, abolition of censorship of the press, and prohibition of the practice of deporting citizens merely through administrative orders. The president of La Solidaridad was Rizal's cousin, Galicano Apacible. Among the other officers were Graciano Lopez, vice president, and Mariano Ponce, treasurer. Rizal in London at the time was named honorary president. Unfortunately, Apacible could not hold the wrangling reformists together. It took the prestige of Rizal and the political wisdom of Del Pilar to unite the Filipinos in Spain and to coordinate their efforts. Abandonment and Assimilation. It was founded on February 15, 1889, and existed up to November 15, 1895. Its first editor was Graciano Lopez, but he was soon succeeded by Marcelo H. del Pilar. La Solidaridad was a political propaganda paper with a liberal, reformist orientation dedicated to the task of fighting reaction in all its forms.
An important factor limiting the influence of the propagandists was the fact that they wrote in Spanish. Censorship seriously limited the inflow of such reading matter and made possession of it very risky. The very attempts of the government to stop the entry of La Solidaridad and prevent its distribution highlighted the lack of freedom that the propagandist was condemning.
In April 4 of the year 1890, another letter containing Rizal's point of view of independence was again written to Del Pilar. So the letter contained about Rizal's abandonment of propaganda La Solidaridad for its goal to that it is no longer fit into results the desire of the Philippines. He said that I could not accept a seat in the Cortes, although my ancestors on my mother's side were congressmen Jose Florentino and Lorenzo Alberto. I am no longer interested in those things. It is clear, uh, it was clear that the viewpoint of his withdrawal campaign that according to him, if offered the seat in the Cortes, he could no longer accept it, even though he came from the family with a political background because of the conflict of principles and goals for the Philippines. Graciano Lopez Haina and Rizal's withdrawal from La Solidaridad was caused by disagreement and differences in deals and aspirations. This left Marcelo H. del Pilar to manage the newspaper single-handedly. In addition to this, The desire of other Filipino nationalists to establish a new organization to counter the Spanish rule resulted in setbacks on the efforts of initiated by La Solidaridad. Marcelo H. del Pilar or Marcelo Hilario del Pilar or Plaridel was left alone with La Solidaridad and came to the point where he doesn't have any money to support his well-being. He ate the cigar tubs or upos ng sigarilyo just to come over hunger. He allotted all his money for publications and publishing the newspapers. Another significant date is the October of the year 1891. I quote, unquote, "If our countrymen hope in us here in Europe, they are certainly mistaken. The help we can give them is our lives in our own country. The error all make in thinking we can help here far away is a great mistake indeed. The medicine must be brought near to the sick man. Had it not had I not been willing to shorten the lives of my parents, I would not have left the Philippines no matter what happened." One of the predominant reforms lobbied by Filipinos was representation in in the Spanish Cortes. This move would have given Filipinos a voice in the Spanish government, though in a limited capacity. Such representation was previously granted to the Filipinos but was taken back. The lack of concrete commitment from the Spanish government only made the representation of Filipinos insufficient to materialize. The field of battle in the Philippines were should we be. This is the letter of Rizal to Blumentritt in 1887. He said that the peaceful struggle remained in a dream, for Spain will never learn from her earlier colonies in South America. But in the present circumstances, we want no separation from Spain. All we demand is more care, better instruction, better officials, one or two representatives, and more security to ourselves and our property. Spain can still win the Philippines herself forever if only Spain will be more reasonable. Clearly, the statement reflects a perspective that could be associated with Rizal's advocacy for peaceful reforms, education, and the pursuit of justice within the context of Spanish colonial rule in the Philippines during the late 19th century. Rizal's rejection of assimilation marked a turning point in the evolution of the Philippine nationalist movement. It signalized a shift in both Rizal's own perspective and the objective and tactics of the movement, since he believed in the promise of Spanish culture and civilization. Rizal initially supported the assimilation. Rizal, however, gave up his assimilationist views after witnessing the horror of Spanish colonizers inflicted on the Filipino people, and he started to support the Philippines' independence because of his dedication to the fight for Filipino independence and his rejection of assimilation as a strategy of achieving equality and justice.
El Filibusterismo, which was published in 1891, is a continuation of Rizal's insightful analysis of the social and political landscape of the colonial Philippines during the Spanish rule. Rizal uses the narrative of filibusterismo to shed light on the injustices and abuses endured by the Filipino people under Spanish colonial rule. El filibusterismo delves into various themes such as social injustice, the misuse of authority, the repercussions of colonialism, and the urgency for societal change. Rizal uses powerful symbolism and allegory to communicate these themes, encouraging readers to contemplate the current circumstances and promote transformation. In the face of adversity from Spanish authorities, El Filibusterismo remains a compelling literary masterpiece that deeply connects with its readers. Rizal's passionate plea for societal change and his unwavering determination to combat injustice have left an enduring impact on the rich tapestry of Philippine history, igniting a fire within subsequent generations to tirelessly pursue a world where fairness and equality prevail. Ultimately, El Filibusterismo stands as a remarkable literary work that adeptly portrays the socio-political climate of the late 19th century Philippines, while also delivering a powerful message for social injustice and reform that transcends time. As we contemplate Rizal's enduring impact, let us find motivation in his words and deeds, striving for a society that upholds justice, freedom, and the inherent worth of every person.
Someone, the story takes place in the Philippines and starts on the Vapor Tabo steamboat, which travels back and forth between Manila and Laguna. Among the notable passengers are Basilio and Isagani, as well as Simon, who is a jeweler with a secret agenda. When Basilio travels to San Diego to visit his mother's grave, he meets Simon, who is actually Crisostomo Ibarra in disguise, who came back after a few years of absence. In an effort to hide his identity, Simon makes a vain attempt to murder Basilio before pushing him to take part in a rebellion against the Spanish government. Basilio replied by rejecting the offer since he wanted to put his studies first. In the other part of the story, during the political climate, Filipino students petition for a Spanish language academy, but the proposal is rejected later on, which leads to discontent. Simon persists in trying to recruit Basilio while planning chaos and an abduction. However, Maria Clara's sudden demise alters these plans. Disappointed students express their grievances at Pansiteria Macanista de Buen Gusto. Posters criticizing the clergy trigger arrests from enforcers, which with Basilio among those who were detained. Julie, his lover, decided to seek help from Padre Camora, and this decision of hers ultimately resulted in her tragic death. Simon collaborates with Don Timoteo Pelaez by initiating a plot at Juanito's wedding using an explosive lamp. After imprisonment, Basilio reluctantly joins Simon's rebellion. Simon reveals the explosive lamp, intending to detonate it at the wedding to signal rebellion. In the last chapters, Basilio eventually tells Isagani about the explosive lamp meant for destruction. This foiled Simon's plan to start a rebellion during Juanito and Juanita's wedding. By tossing the lamp into the river and stopping the rebel signal, Isagani was able to avoid the catastrophe. Simon takes up refuge in Padre Florentino's home, who is a Filipino priest. Simon makes a decision to consume poison in order to evade detection and detention as authorities move in on him. He tells Padre Florentino his genuine identity and intentions before passing away. In the end, Padre Florentino throws Simon's remaining jewels into the sea. This act of throwing the representations of Simon's quest for vengeance into the sea symbolizes Simon's intricate revenge scheme coming to an end.
While the Spaniards feared Rizal's growing influence among the people, the Spanish colonial government hoped to shorten his reach by sending him to the Pitan in Zamboanga del Norte, Mindanao. He arrived July 17, 1892 via boat in the most isolated city in Zamboanga. Rizal bought land in Dalisay and lived a simple life there. He used his name to tend to his farm, treat patients, and teach children to write and read. In a letter to his dear friend Ferdinand Blumentritt, he detailed how his morning went. I rise early in the morning at 5 I visit my plants, feed the chickens, awaken my people, and prepare our breakfast. At 7:30, we eat our breakfast, which consists of tea, bread, cheese, sweets, and other things. Based on his letter, and as relaxing as it is, Rizal was a busy man, always on the move to learn new things and knowledge. He also provided primary education while in exile. Most of his students are from faraway provinces, and he took them in and let them stay in two dormitories on his farmland, Casa Redonda and Casa Cuadrada. In exchange for a free stay, students assist him in the mornings in his chores and farming. Another letter to Ferdinand Blumentritt reads, "My life goes on peacefully and monotonously. To pass the time and help the local people here, I have turned merchant. I buy hemp and ship it to Manila. I was lucky this month. I made $200 at one blow. My present life is tranquil, peaceful, withdrawn, and without glory. But I think it is also useful. I am teaching some poor but intelligent children how to read Spanish and English, mathematics, and how to behave like men." Below are Rizal's tools in teaching. A table and blackboard were used in his makeshift school in Dapitan.
As observed in the aforementioned letter, Rizal did not waste his life in exile and still pursued to help the community he was in. His deeds left an impressive and lasting impact on the town and its people that continues to this day among the present generation. One of these efforts was establishing a clinic in Casa Redonda, which he maintained and operated himself. He provided diagnosis, treated the people's ailments, and provided free consultations. In addition to his medical practice, Rizal dedicated himself to educating the community about the significance of maintaining proper sanitation practices. Through his efforts, he instilled a sense of health consciousness among the people, urging them to embrace a healthy lifestyle, including adopting nutritious diets. Rizal also spent much of his time exploring the nature of the Pitan. He collected numerous specimens of reptiles, amphibians, birds, insects, plants, and shells, many of which he sent to the Ethnographic Museum in Dresden, Germany, for proper identification. This curiosity led him to discover four new species: the harlequin tree frog or Rhacophoris rizali, a flying lizard or Draco rizali, and two beetles, Apogonia rizali and Spathomilis rizali. The drawings seen here are his sketches of nature that he has found and studied. Moreover, Rizal led projects for overall community development. Specifically, he developed a water system that continued to be used until the 1930s. This encompassed the creation of artesian wells, irrigation canals, and a comprehensive water distribution network. With these newfound opportunities, he promoted advanced farming practices, which alleviated the agriculture and fishing economy in the town. He advocated for modern agricultural methods, introduced new crop varieties, emphasized pest control measures, and provided agricultural education on fertilizers, crop rotation, and farm machines. However, the communication of his ideas went beyond the Pitan, even in exile. Like the letters Rizal wrote to Ferdinand Blumentritt, he maintained secret correspondence with intellectuals and patriots, ensuring the exchange of thoughts and perspectives. This picture is a sketch of himself that he sent to Blumentritt from one of his correspondences. His communication with such people maintained order in the group of Filipino patriots, being constantly asked about their decisions. This shows the critical role that the letters of Rizal played in freeing the Filipinos from the hands of the Spaniards. Rizal's 4 years in Dapitan would end on July 31, 1896, after he had hoped to embark on a journey to Cuba to serve as a voluntary military doctor. He would never make it to Cuba after the Spanish government had him arrested mid-travel and sent back home for sentencing. The government confiscated his properties in Dapitan.
Following his imprisonment in Barcelona, Rizal received orders from General Leo Despujol directing his transportation back to Manila aboard the ship Colon. While on board, Rizal learned that Madrid newspapers extensively covered stories about the Philippine Revolution, placing blame on him. Friends of Rizal in Europe and Singapore got wind of his situation and urgently sent telegrams to an English lawyer in Singapore, seeking to secure Rizal's release through a writ of habeas corpus. Unfortunately, the writ was rejected, and Rizal continued to be confined on the ship. On November 3, 1896, the colon arrived in Manila, and Rizal was discreetly transferred to Fort Santiago. Shortly thereafter, the initial inquiry commenced, presided over by Colonel Francisco Olive, serving as the judge advocate. Two types of evidence were presented against Rizal: documentary and testimonial. The documentary evidence encompassed letters suggesting Rizal's involvement in the propaganda movement, transcripts of speeches where the Katipunan invoked his name, and several of his poems with strong nationalistic themes. Testimonial evidence, on the other hand, included the spoken accounts of various individuals acquainted with Rizal. The Spanish colonial authorities leveled three charges against Rizal. One, establishing La Liga Filipina, deemed an awful organization with the sole intent of committing the offense of rebellion. Second, promotion rebellion through his past endeavors. Third, participation in an illegal association. Although Rizal did not contest these charges, he entered a plea of not guilty specifically to the charge of rebellion. On December 15, Rizal penned a manifesto from his prison cell at Fort Santiago, urging his compatriots to halt the unnecessary shedding of blood and attain their freedoms through education and industry. The trial of Rizal began on December 26, 1896, at the Cuartel de España. Despite compelling pleas, the military court marked its vengeful stance and anonymously opted for the death sentence. Polavieja affirmed that the court-martial's decision directing that Rizal be executed at 7 in the morning on December 30, 1896 at Bagong Bayan Field.
At 6:30 on December 30, Rizal left his cell in Fort Santiago and marched to the site of his execution in Bagumbayan, which is now the Luneta. He was wearing a black suit and a white vest. Fathers Estanislao March, Jose Villaclara, and Lieutenant Taviel de Andrade, the military's assigned attorney, accompanied Rizal. With a rosary clasped in his right hand, Rizal and his companions followed four bayonet-wielding advance guards while being restrained at the elbows. According to historical reports, the firing squad that the Spanish authorities sent to execute Rizal was made up of 6 to 8 voluntary Filipino soldiers. Adolfo Pastor Quasuti, a descendant of one of the executioners, related that only one of the rifles was loaded with a live bullet, while the others were blanks. He explained that this was done to lessen the guilt of Rizal's executioners, who knew he was innocent. As a backup plan, if the Filipino troops decided to retreat, another group of Peninsular soldiers stood behind them. Rizal insisted on facing his executioners and refused to be blindfolded. He wanted to demonstrate his patriotism and willingness to die for his country, but that request was declined. Before the execution, Dr. Felipe Ruiz Castillo assessed Rizal's vital signs and pulse rate, and was shocked to see that the national hero was fearless and at ease. At the cry of fuego or fire from the squad commander, Rizal turned to face the firing squad. Consumatum est, which translates to "it is completed," was Rizal's last words before he passed away, falling facing up and seeing the dawn break.
Rizal is the epitome of everything mentioned in the definitions of a hero. He is a towering figure of the propaganda movement and in other affairs of the society. His works, achievements, and contributions in various fields have been remarkably influential. Rizal, in the face of danger, was bold despite the odds, and lastly, he was honored even more after his death because of the legacies he left behind. No law, executive order, or proclamation has been enacted or issued that officially proclaims any Filipino historical figure as the national hero, according to NCAA in 2015. Thus, Rizal's title is sometimes questioned. The National Historical Commission of the Philippines, NHCP, acknowledges that Rizal is commonly regarded as a national hero, emphasizing that Filipinos have recognized him through acclamation, even without formal legislation. The NHCP indicates that official declarations formalize such recognitions, but the essence lies in the Filipinos' acknowledgement. In 1901, just a few years after his execution, Jose Rizal was recognized as the Philippine national hero under the United States colonial government led by civil governor William Howard Taft. The Taft Commission solidified Rizal's status by honoring him as the country's greatest hero and martyr. Additionally, the commission commemorated Rizal by constructing a monument in Luneta, now called Rizal Park. In September of the same year, this monument built under Act No. 243 is a resting place for Rizal's remains. In 1902, the Philippine Commission further institutionalized the recognition of Rizal by issuing Act No. 345, officially designated December 30 as Rizal Day. Rizal's acknowledgement as the national hero received additional reinforcement in 1956 with the enactment of Republic Act 1425. This law mandated the teaching of Rizal's life, writings, and works at all levels of public and private schools in the Philippines, further cementing his place in the country's educational curriculum and collective memory.
Jose Rizal, a Filipino national hero, was a significant figure in Philippine history, known for his exceptional leadership abilities and writings, particularly La Solidaridad. He was referred to as a transcendental hero, possessing all of the characteristics of a hero without the need for a sword or weapon. Rizal's work, achievements, and novels were notable and important in society. Despite the lack of law, executive order, or proclamation declaring him a national hero, William Howard Taft proposed that Rizal be named national hero. Since then, Rizal became a popular hero with monuments in the Philippines and around the world. His legacy continues to inspire others to build nations, embody nationalism, and love their country.